Studio Ghibli. Maybe you haven't watched any of their movies, but certainly that name should ring a bell. An animation giant that has epitomized the true meaning of storytelling using traditional animation, with tales that take you from the melancholy of the struggles of an aeronautic engineer in World War II to the fictitious world of a princess willing to do anything for the safety of her people. These stories sometimes might not at all be captivating, but where these stories lack, the animation shines through. The idea of animation is to make what is still appear alive, giving the audience the illusion that elements on screen are moving or animated. Studio Ghibli movies take you on a journey whereby with every frame your eyes might pick up colors or elements interacting with each other that may not be the centerpiece of a scene, leaving you mesmerized with how exuberant each frame is. It might not be the 2D characters, it might be a bathhouse or a clubhouse or even an open scenery. The handling and attention to detail when compositing makes even these environments feel alive. Though computer-generated imagery or CGI animation has made this whole concept of giving life to still images easier, I feel with it brings its own shortcomings. I'm one who thinks that good animation is good animation, be it CGI, hand-drawn, or both. But with CGI, you lose the sense of adventure, and as an audience are more subjected to focus on the characters rather than the freedom we feel when watching a traditionally animated movie. And honestly, there's no other company that has brought out stunning traditionally animated movies for the past 3 decades or more than Studio Ghibli. And with what is said to be the last movie of Hayao Miyazaki on the horizon, one might reminisce on the rapid rise of Studio Ghibli. To understand this rise, you cannot go farther than these two personalities, Isao Takahata and Hayao Miyazaki. They are said to be the founding members of Studio Ghibli, with a well-known producer known as Toshio Suzuki, who came to produce almost all of Miyazaki's movies. Both personalities have their own unique way of directing these wonderful movies. Isao and Miyazaki had been working together on past work, but it wasn't until the adaptation of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind that gained both critical and financial success. This led to the dream team uniting to form Studio Ghibli. Now, history out of the way, what I find unique about both of them is how they both play loosely with their movies. They can go from a sad, deeper story that might appease an older audience to a more light-hearted story filled with adventure that might appease a younger audience. With directing such broad spectrum of movies, one might think that their work won't stand out as their own, but that is not so. Each of their movies carry messages that are unique to each director's, even though most of the time they are adapting someone else's story. I like to feel that Miyazaki creates these fantastical worlds filled with wonder and adventure. With each movie, there is this incessant reminder of the interactions between the characters on screen and the elements that make up the environment around them. From the sceneries of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, whereby the main theme is for humans and insects to coexist as one, or the jungles of Princess Mononoke that also shows the struggles of humans in understanding and taking care of the world around them. Each of his movies depicts such mesmerizing worlds as a living entity, one that the characters might want to protect or one that the characters might want to utilize. And this is not just seen in the more fantasy or sci-fi oriented movies, but even stories like The Wind Rises. You see Jiro's obsession with utilizing the wind, learning to understand it to bring about beautiful but yet powerful planes that will unfortunately lead to catastrophe. Miyazaki's approach to the use of his characters is to draw in moments of realism, whereby no matter how outlandish the world around the characters might be, you still relate to the struggles of these characters on screen, making you more drawn in emotionally to their plight. Take Princess Mononoke for example. There is no actual baddie in this story. Each group has their own goal and approaches them the best way they feel possible. This makes you more invested to what might happen, not just to the main characters, but everyone on screen, which ultimately leads to stories that have a deeper meaning. Like Miyazaki said, we were aggressive, but we were able to think in such a way that it's okay if it's not fun, because we make movies to depict humans, and the important thing is that the movie has a meaning. From this statement, we understand that Miyazaki's movies are aimed towards teaching a certain subject matter, not just creating wonderful visuals. Now then, Miyazaki's approach to animation is what elevates these stories. In my opinion, not all Miyazaki stories are capable of working. Sometimes these stories end up feeling oddly cliche, but through the vibrancy of what you see, you are left with a feeling of fresh air, even though you might have just ingested the most cringy adolescent love story. My humble opinion though. Spirited Away by far is the most visually impactful thing I have ever watched. The use of light and dark hues to depict the tones in scenes, the harsher hues of lighter colors used to depict the bustling nature of the bathhouse, or the interior of the train that makes you feel so on edge by the active scene playing in front of you. Not just telling a story by characters being active or even by stimulating auditory senses, but also visually stimulating the audience to have a feel of the tones portrayed in each scene. Now, it is also noteworthy that most of these movies by Studio Ghibli are adaptations of other people's stories, but this does not take away from the expert world building that Miyazaki, Takahata, or any other directors for Studio Ghibli puts into it. Okay, speaking of directors, let's move on to Isao Takahata. In my opinion, Isao's three best work include Grave of Fireflies, Tales of Princess Kaguya, and Only Yesterday. By the way, Grave of Fireflies is my best Studio Ghibli movie. I regard Takahata to be one drawn towards the everyday, a master of crafting what feels like real-life day-to-day stories. Take the movie Only Yesterday. I never thought I'll be so massively invested in watching a single woman reminisce on her days as a 10-year-old, whereby these 10-year-old memories lead her to what was a turning point in her life. In this story, there is not much pacing at all, but I was captivated by its simplicity and drawn to understand why these memories plague Taiko, the main character, throughout the movie. Honestly, the only thing I could feel after watching these three movies that I stated before was melancholy. With Grave of Fireflies, I was left with a sadness after watching the struggles these two children faced due to the firebombing of their home, even though Takahata literally shows us how the movie ends in the beginning. With the Tales of Princess Kaguya, I was left with an emptiness, not knowing how to feel after watching Kaguya grow from a tiny nymph to a strong woman trying to make her own choices, to be ultimately forced from the hands of her parents by a plot point straight out of a sci-fi movie. And lastly, Only Yesterday left me with a bittersweet taste, one who yearns to follow the journey of Taiko even beyond the end credits of the movie. Takahata is capable of tackling such deeper emotions and tones, and does so excellently. Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata are the two shoguns of Studio Ghibli. Why do I say shoguns? Because the greatness of this company cannot be said without their names being echoed. And also, saying shogun also sounds cool. Now, be it whether they were competing with one another, like in 1988 with the release of My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of Fireflies, or whether they were collaborating, like in the release of Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, there is no question that these two revolutionized the meaning of traditional animation. But such cannot be said about my next influential figure at Studio Ghibli, to which that is Goro Miyazaki. Like the name gives away, Goro is the son of Hayao Miyazaki, a man once considered as the potential heir to Studio Ghibli, but has received backlash over most of the movies he has released with Studio Ghibli. I personally feel that Goro was a fish put on dry land and told to swim. It does not work. This is a man who had no initial idea of animation and was given the director's seat for the movie adaptation of Earthsea. A brilliant book, by the way, but it does not matter how good the resource is. If one has no experience to bring it to life, it does not work. Like Goro himself said, I had absolutely no technical know-how or detailed understanding of things. I just consult Yamashita-san about how I imagined the art would look, and he'd say we can just put it together like this. Now, judging from what Goro said, I don't know whose idea it was for this dude's head to be this long, but that's by the way. Tales of Earthsea is always considered as a blemish on Studio Ghibli's arsenal of brilliant movies. I'm not going to get into the movie at all, but let me just say this. The movie had nothing going for it. No emotion, no explanation of so many plot points. In all, it felt really scattered. Goro did go on to direct the movie From Up on Poppy Hill, which I classify to be his best work, although he did work with his father for this movie. A lovely movie about Japanese adolescents learning to leave the war era behind them while uncovering memories from it that looks to affect their future. After this movie, Goro went into the world of CGI and created Studio Ghibli's first fully CGI feature film, which was also not a hit. Even with the backlash, Goro still said, "I would like to continue on the path of making 3D CGI films." So then, it begs the question, with Takahata gone but not forgotten, and Miyazaki saying he'll probably retire after How Do You Live, will Studio Ghibli explore the world of CGI, or will they go out to get directors who share their love for traditional animation? Either way, what is for certain is that this is the end of an era, be it not for Studio Ghibli, but for the wonders that came out of these two heavyweights, Takahata and Miyazaki. So, thank you for watching the video. I could have spoken about other directors from Studio Ghibli, like Yoshifumi Kondo or Hiromasa Yonebayashi, but this video would have been way too long for me to edit. So yeah, we passed 100 subs last week. To me, that was unbelievable for some reason. So thank you very much. Please feel free to object or add to any of the points I raised in this video, and I'll reply to it in no time. Do subscribe and like if you loved what you watched. God loves you, and I love you too. Bye bye.